On February 6, 2025, after spending more than 35 years on death row, Demetrius Frazier was executed by nitrogen hypoxia in Alabama. In this video, we'll uncover what happened, his last meal, and his last words. It was the evening of November 27, 1991, in Birmingham, Alabama. The TV still flickered in the corner of Pauline Brown's modest ground floor apartment, casting a blue light over the living room. She had fallen asleep on the couch after working late the night before. She was 40 years old, tired, alone, and completely unaware of the danger about to crawl through her window. Outside, 19-year-old Demetrius Frazier was wandering. He wasn't looking for anything in particular, but when he spotted the light in Pauline's apartment, he stopped. The screen from the window came off easy. One quiet pull, and he was inside. He moved through the place like a shadow, opening drawers, tipping over boxes. Found a few wrinkled bills in a kitchen drawer, $10, maybe less. But then he saw Pauline, still asleep, vulnerable, and that changed everything. Demetrius shook her awake and demanded money. Scared, she handed him $80 from her purse, hoping it would be enough, but it wasn't. Demetrius pulled a gun and forced himself on her. She begged him to let her live. She told him she had family and pleaded with him to let her go. But the more she begged, the more he hardened, and when she didn't stop, he pulled the trigger. Worried the shot had been heard, he stepped outside, scanning the street for movement. But he didn't see anything. So he walked back in, and by then, Pauline was dead. Demetrius searched the apartment again, looking for more cash, but there was nothing left. So he helped himself to some of her food, ate it, and walked out. He tossed the gun and disappeared into the night. The next morning, Pauline's coworker, Tyrone Mitchell, waited outside for her. She was supposed to pick him up for work, but she never showed, which was nothing like her. After a few unanswered calls, worry set in. He drove to her apartment, hoping it was just a mix-up. Her car was in the lot, but the lights were off, and the place felt still, too still. Tyrone knocked, called out her name, tried the door. Nothing. Then, with help from two maintenance men, he managed to pry open a window and climb inside. And what they found there would stay with them for the rest of their life. Pauline was lying face down in her bedroom, and she was gone. There was nothing more they could do. Pauline was a mother of two and a brand new grandmother. Her first grandchild had just been born weeks earlier, but now she would never get to hold that baby again. The scene was devastating, and no one had any answers. Whoever had done it was gone. But the silence didn't last. A few months later, on March 8, 1992, in Detroit, Demetrius struck again. That day, 14-year-old Crystal Kendrick was found dead inside an abandoned house. The place was gutted, cold, stripped of anything useful, and forgotten by nearly everyone. But that afternoon, Crystal was trapped inside it. She'd run away from home again, and this wasn't the first time. Her life had started falling apart ever since her mother spiraled into addiction and vanished from her world. Friends said Crystal used to be quiet, polite, a good kid. But without anyone steady in her life, she started slipping through the cracks. And that's when she crossed paths with Demetrius Frazier. Inside that abandoned house, Demetrius tried to rape her, but Crystal fought back. She tried to run, but Demetrius pulled a gun and shot her in the head before she could make it to the door. She collapsed on the filthy floor and was gone instantly. Demetrius didn't look back. He just stepped over her body and walked out, leaving Crystal cold and alone in that forgotten place. Police in Michigan identified him as a suspect almost right away. But at that time, Demetrius was already a wanted man, linked to another brutal case just months earlier. In Alabama, authorities were building a case against him for the rape and murder of Pauline Brown. Then they finally caught up with him, and within hours, the confessions started coming. First, he admitted to killing Crystal. Then he confessed to murdering Pauline too. 2 states, 2 women, 2 lives gone, all taken by the same man. But what made him capable of crossing that line? Not once, but twice. Demetrius Terrence Frazier was born in Michigan on October 29, 1972. He grew up with a sister and his mother, Carol, but little stability. Carol did what she could, but things were always on shaky ground. Demetrius was often left to raise himself, and by the time he was still a boy, barely old enough for elementary school, he had already started sneaking out at night. He was breaking into houses and stealing what he could. Social services got involved, but nothing ever stuck. He dropped out of school early and racked up his first charges before he was even old enough to drive, carrying a concealed weapon, breaking and entering, and probation violations. He eventually landed in a juvenile lockup outside Detroit, where he earned his GED. But that wasn't enough to turn things around. By the time he turned 18, Demetrius had already built a rap sheet longer than most men twice his age, and by the time he was 19, he had taken 2 lives. Between 1993 and 1996, Demetrius stood trial in 2 states for the 2 separate murders, and neither courtroom would forget him. The trial in Michigan came first. On July 9, 1992, prosecutors charged him with the killing of 14-year-old Crystal Kendrick. But that wasn't all. He was also accused of raping 8 women across the state in the months before Crystal's death. But before the jury ever sat down, Demetrius tried to get his confession thrown out. He claimed it wasn't real, that he had been manipulated. He said the lead detective, Monica Childs, had earned his trust, that he had even fallen for her. According to him, she promised he wouldn't be sent back to Alabama, where the death penalty was still in play. Michigan didn't have that, but he was wrong if he thought that story would save him. The court didn't buy it, and his confession stayed in. On April 8, 1993, the verdict came in: guilty of felony murder and felony firearm possession, and he was handed 2 life sentences. But this was just the beginning. That October, he was sentenced again, this time for an armed robbery and 2 rapes committed just months before Crystal's death. And this time, the judge gave him 2 more life terms, plus 60 to 90 years. Then came Alabama. In November 1993, a Jefferson County grand jury indicted Demetrius for the capital murder of Pauline Brown. And unlike Michigan, Alabama did have the death penalty, and they planned to use it. 3 years later, on June 5, 1996, after a tense trial, Demetrius was found guilty of capital murder during a robbery and guilty of murder during rape. But he didn't go quietly. As the jury prepared to deliver their verdict, Demetrius snapped. He threw a pen at them and accused them, most of them white, of being racist. 2 days later, the jury voted 10-2 to recommend death. And on August 8, 1996, the judge made it official. For killing Pauline, Demetrius Frazier was sentenced to die, and for the rape that led to her death, he was given life in prison. But there was one problem. For years, Demetrius served his time in Michigan, and Michigan didn't have the death penalty. They hadn't for over a century. So while he served 4 life sentences for the rapes and the murder of Crystal Kendrick, Alabama waited. In 2011, after 18 years behind Michigan bars, the paperwork finally moved. An agreement between the governors of both states cleared the way, and Demetrius was transferred to Holman Correctional Facility in Atmore, Alabama, home of the state's death row and its execution chamber. Here, his cell was smaller and the stakes were higher, and from that point on, Demetrius wasn't just a lifer. He was a man waiting to die. Over the years, he filed multiple appeals, all of which were denied. And in 2025, after spending another 14 years on death row, Alabama scheduled his execution using nitrogen hypoxia, a controversial method involving the inhalation of pure nitrogen gas, leading to death by oxygen deprivation. On February 6, 2025, Demetrius had his final meal from Taco Bell, a beefy 5-layer burrito, a chicken chalupa supreme, beef crunchy tacos, chips and dip, and a Mountain Dew. That afternoon, his mother and sister were allowed to visit. They said goodbye just hours before he was taken to the chamber. In his final statement, Demetrius apologized to Pauline Brown's family. He spoke to the African American community too, saying, "What happened to her should never have happened. Then he shifted, calling out Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer for not stepping in to bring him back to Michigan. His last words were, "Detroit strong. I love everyone on death row. Let's go." Just after 6 p.m., the nitrogen started flowing. At first, there were faint gasps, small, scattered. Then his chest began to rise and fall in uneven bursts. By 6:21 p.m., his body went still. And 13 minutes after the gas started flowing, medical staff confirmed what everyone in the room already knew. His heart had stopped. At 6:36 p.m., he was officially pronounced dead. Demetrius Terrence Frazier was 52 years old.